Good morning, Revolution, and welcome to our show this morning. Happy that all of you were able to join us. We have a lot to talk about, a lot in the news. We're going to be discussing some labor issues. Then there was a lot of news about nasty boys and men in the Republican Party and the MAGA movement and their manifold transgressions. Now, I'm talking about transgressions. And then there was the case of which we dealt with last week, of a young African American who was murdered in cold blood, suffocated on a New York subway in a chokehold. Some breaking news yesterday about that. And then we have a kicker for you. But first, welcome, Joe Henry. We're happy to have you.
Good
Um,
to be here.
glad you could make it, Joe. You know, we were talking a month or two ago about the upcoming labor struggles, and we focused on uh, the postal workers contract coming up at the end of May, and UPS coming up in July, and the auto workers coming up. But there were a whole lot of other labor issues that were before the country, including the strikes of the teachers in LA, the graduate students and professors in Newark, at the Rutgers University, not Newark, though I think Rutgers has a campus. Um, and in fact, in March, there were a total of 47 strikes with 74,300 workers on the picket line, 47 of which were in California, Rosanna. California seems to be the leading state in strike activity, class struggle activity in the country. But Joe, I wanted to ask you, there's another big labor issue in the news today, and that is the expiration of Title 42, dealing with immigration and the entry of migrants into the United States, migrant labor, in their overwhelming majority. And the Biden administration has sent 1,400 troops down there. The Republican Party passed its version of immigration deform yesterday. It doesn't stand a chance in the Senate, of course. What's it going to take for us to have comprehensive immigration reform in this country that's fair and just, in your opinion, Joe?
Well, Joe, thank you. Thank you for having me on. And what is it going to take to have comprehensive immigration reform? Well, we could have had it back in 2008, 2009, well, 2009 when Obama first became president. But it is going to take voting. We're going to have a majority in the House. We're going to have to work really hard on that next time around. Of course, that will also be the 2024 presidential election. We need to have both House, Senate, and the president's office Democrat in order to do that. And of course, we need mobilization of people getting into the streets, doing marches, building coalitions, having a united front effort. 2.8 million times uh, people seeking asylum into the U.S. over the last several years have been rejected due to Title 42. Very unfortunate that that was used. That's an old 1944 law that was implemented by Trump in 2020 using a health scare to do that. Um, so it's going to take mobilization and it's going to take the 2024 elections for many progressive groups to really mobilize the vote. That's the only way that we're going to get comprehensive immigration reform. We need to help the 11 million undocumented that are already here. And then, of course, there's a between 8,000 to 10,000 people seeking refuge at the southern border every day, and of course, are being turned back. And now, with the expiration of Title 42, there will be long lines. There's not enough judges, not enough processing officials to really help those in need who are seeking asylum. Thank you, Joe.
Well, I was wondering, I wanted to ask you a little bit about just another quick question about Title 42 because it seems that the Biden administration reversed itself a little bit on the asylum issue. They were taking a good position on it up until a month or two ago. They were challenging the uh, provisions, and there was going to be a Supreme Court case on it. All of a sudden, the Supreme Court took the case off the docket, and now they have developed rather stringent guidelines for admitting people into the country based on asylum. What the heck happened?
It's a very crazy thing. Basically, what the Biden administration has done is they've done kind of a Trump-like type of regulation, which will require those seeking asylum to first go to their home countries to apply for that, and then, if denied, then they can come to the U.S. So that's one of the requirements. Another requirement is for them to apply for asylum to the U.S. by way of an app on phones or through the computers, which many asylum seekers do not have smartphones, who are, who have gone tens of thousands of miles to get to the southern border. So those restrictions also for those asylum seekers who've been part of that 2.8 million times over the last couple of years, if they have if they have crossed over to the U.S. And have been turned back, that will then require them to wait 5 years before they can apply again. So all these moving parts are holding these asylum seekers hostage over in Mexico, and also being forced back into their home countries. So it's a very terrible situation. There's a lot of protests, especially with civil rights attorneys. The ACLU is also going to be putting forth a lawsuit to try to change some of these unconstitutional things, because, as we know, the constitution of our country does guarantee asylum to those seeking refuge. So yes, lots of roadblocks, and the Biden administration has taken a Trump-like view of this with these different restrictions.
This is why we had to build there has to be a mass movement in this country from below on the issues of immigration, on the issues of peace, on the issues of labor rights. Without that, the center forces in the country, when I say center, I mean the political center in the Democratic Party or wherever, they're going to move to the right. That's all I used to say. Liberals always move to the right under pressure, and that's what is happening. Let's turn the discussion to the labor movement. And we started off indicating that there are workers are standing up and fighting back and striking on the picket line. In right now, there's the Hollywood writers are out on strike, and there's a good chance 385,000 workers at UPS are going to get on the picket line. What's going on? Are there negotiations taking place, Joe?
Thank you, Joe. Yes, the Teamsters are in negotiation with UPS across the country. Many supplements are being negotiated right now, and quite successfully. Most of the supplements, because there's regional agreements that need to be renegotiated along with a national agreement. The Teamsters are now down to just two supplements that need to be resolved, both in Northern California and in Louisville, Kentucky, two major areas, especially in Louisville, Kentucky, where there's over 10,000 workers at an air hub operation. Once those two supplements get negotiated, they're going to go into the national master negotiations, which really cover a lot of different things, major elements of the UPS Teamster agreement. Now, what is really good is that in mid-April, there were many demonstrations, rallies held by UPS Teamsters across the country to show their support for negotiations for having a strong contract. that works on equitable wages, that provides for more full-time jobs, good health care provisions, good union Teamster pensions. So those things are happening, and I must say that a lot of the successes that are really going on in negotiations right now are due to the 1997 UPS Teamster negotiations that happened, where UPS Teamsters went on strike for 15 days to win a very successful contract back in 1997. The fear of what the Teamsters could do have really required management at UPS to deal fairly with the workers there at UPS. And again, this contract negotiations will set the pattern for negotiations for other union agreements in other industries across the country.
So all but two have been resolved. So do you think there's going to be a strike?
Yes, no, maybe. It depends. We never know what management might do. Management is playing ball right now, but they could end up doing something devious. We don't know what to expect. And that's why it's important for UPSers to really work on continuing to communicate, to talk with their coworkers, to do any hand billing they can in parking lots during lunchroom breaks, to talk about the contract, the negotiations, the issues. Different groups are out there providing information along with the National Teamsters Office. So staying cohesive, united, building coalitions on a local level, talking about the issues not only that affect UPSers, but also affect all workers across the country, fighting for good contracts and the need for living wages, full-time employment that is fair and good benefits. So we always must be careful. We never know what could happen next. And that's why continuing to build that unity is very important.
And sometimes you can agree on 90%. You can resolve the easier questions early, but that remaining 10% can be a monster. And, you know,
Exactly.
so, what can the supporters of the Teamsters do? Are they looking to build labor community unity?
Yes, I mean the Teamsters, especially the Teamster locals, out of the 700 and some Teamster locals across country in Canada, there's about nearly 200 locals that have UPSers, and they want to build solidarity with different community groups, social justice groups, other unions, the FL-CIO. So it's very important for those who are concerned, the working class, to really build those relationships, to reach out to UPSers, to provide any type of support that can be provided at this time. And really, communication is important now, participating in rallies that will be called down the road to show support on a community level. This UPS negotiations is probably the most public type of negotiations because of the fact that UPS drivers spend daily time with their customers, business sector, and also residential. So this is a very unique, interesting campaign because of uh, the public essence of UPSers. Everybody knows who UPSers are. Again, businesses have great relationships with UPS drivers, so that communications happens on a daily basis. So really, by helping UPS Teamsters win good negotiations, this will set a pattern for other unions who may not be as visible, but have very important issues to negotiate. So very important, and we're looking forward to winning this, but it has to be cohesive on a local level.
Well, thank you very, very much, Joe. You know, building that labor community support is important, not only for the struggle on the shop floor for the union nationally, but also it's going to have implications for the upcoming presidential elections. And we see that the MAGA right is going just crazy all over the country. So thank you for coming. And we're going to have you back, you know, as that deadline, as that July 31st deadline approaches. Um, but right now, we're going to shift the conversation to talk about developments during the week, uh, one of which was the rape trial of uh, Donald Trump here in New York. The plaintiff won a major case in Mr. Trump. I think it was a several $1 million settlement. Welcome, Anita. Glad
Hi,
to.
everybody.
Um, in fact, we titled this show. Rape, uh, CNN, and lies, rape, lies, and CNN. Because right after the trial, Rosanna, CNN broadcast a interview with Mr. Trump in New Hampshire with a solid MAGA crowd behind him. And according to reports, he acted a complete fool. Trump unleashed, just bragging, attacking the woman again, uh, saying that men have raped women for 2,000 years, or since the beginning of human history, and it's okay. And uh, I mean, he just did. I didn't get a chance to watch it. I've just been reading the news broadcast of it. Uh, what do you think,
I,
Rosanna?
well, I wouldn't watch it, period. I don't understand why CNN, what's the motive behind CNN doing this right after the trial, knowing full well who he is, his behavior. What were they thinking about accomplishing in that moment? Other than, Trump may be shifting the support or the mainstream media outlet from Fox to CNN, which I hope that's not the case. I saw Anderson Cooper trying to defend their uh, their reasoning for putting it, broadcasting such a thing. Um, I read also that he was so rude and disgusting towards the person that was I think her name was Collins. Um, as she was asking questions, he was clearly being misogynistic, clearly being chauvinistic, clearly being his own arrogant, uh, disgusting self. Um, so I can't understand what CNN was thinking, and we once again we've got to rally and organize against all of this. We really have to speak out. We can't allow our country to be ruled by this fool again.
Anita, a couple of weeks before that, Trump was in New York for one of the depositions, and CNN broadcast a image of his airplane sitting on the runway for 45 minutes, with his private jet with TRUMP on the, and it was like 45 minutes of free advertising. And now, 2, 3 weeks later, they provide this 40 hour long or hour and I don't know how long the town hall was free. Is CNN moving to the right, or is it all about eyeballs and dollars and an attempt to generate more advertising revenue? Or is it a combination of the two? What the hell's going on with them?
I think money is the bottom line here, Joe. You got it with eyeballs and dollars. Apparently, CNN's usual audience is about 400,000 people, and on the night that they had that town hall with Trump, they got 3 million voters,
Mm.
viewers. So I'm sure that the temptation to make money is going to be really what rules CNN's behavior going forward. And it was really despicable. I couldn't find the stream to watch the whole thing, but the clips that I saw were really. I mean, he's promising 4 years of just the most horrendous policies. And by the way, I know on this particular program, I once said maybe just a few months ago that I thought Trump was finished, and now it seems very clear that he's on on the slippery slope to being the Republican nominee for president, and this is so dangerous. We just have to fight against it on every level, and that includes working in your on your state and local level as well as in national politics to just make sure that he could never be near the White House again.
Yeah, he's sliding like a greased pig on wheels down
Mm.
Mount Olympus, Scott, towards the Republican nomination. But I want to come back to uh, CNN. Do you think that in some ways this thing might backfire? Because a lot of the Republicans are upset because they say it's going to alienate the independent vote and that it might be good for him in the Republican primary, but in the general election, he's not going to win the suburban vote. You know, he's not going to win the suburbs of Philly or the suburb of Detroit or Pittsburgh or Milwaukee or Atlanta. And that in particular, women, because of the way he bullied the moderator the other night, that it's going to backfire. What do you think?
Um, so I think that's, if there is something in addition to eyeballs and dollars, as you and Anita talked about, um, this is part of the political calculation that CNN is making. It's a certain strategy that a lot of kind of liberal center groups use, um, thinking that if you just uh, put these fascists on TV out in front of people, they'll eventually, stick their foot so far into their mouth that they'll alienate everybody. They'll alienate women, they'll alienate young people, they'll alienate. But that doesn't work. That's not a like giving fascists free airtime and hoping that they'll alienate people is not a winning strategy. It's not a struggle perspective, as we sometimes say in the party. The only way to defeat the fascist threat is, as you said over and over, with a mass movement. It's going to take a struggle. It's not the kind of thing where we can just, we got some of this on the abortion, the reproductive rights question as well. Sort of a cynical, like, abortion wins elections, right? Like, oh, the Republicans are going to, attack women's rights so hard that they're going to turn everybody off and we're going to win but that's not, that ignores a very important piece, which is you know, the struggle required uh, to eliminate the fascist threat and to move us toward democracy. And as we were saying earlier in the labor section, that struggle has to be led by by the working class. There's no force in the ruling class that can lead that struggle.
Did you see what happened? Trump is running as an unabashed, fascist-minded, greased pig. I mean, but he's not alone. Abbott, isn't that the governor of Texas? You saw the case, Rosanna, where he shot and killed he shot and killed a guy 2 years ago uh, at a Black Lives Matter demonstration. The shooter was convicted of murder, and now Abbott wants to pardon him and is calling on the parole board of Texas to grant the killer a pardon. They're just, running as far to the right as they possibly can, Rosanna. They act like they just don't care.
Well, the point though is for us to stop it. The point for us is not to feel like, oh, it's hopeless, but there is a lot of hope. We just have to organize ourselves and and voice our opposition, but loudly through whatever ways we can, which is through the ballot box, by calling members of Congress, by setting up picket lines, by uh, um, also just organizing and talking to our family and friends. It's becoming much more to become much more conscious of what's happening, and fully understanding that we do have the power to stop it. We have to band together and unite to put an end to this. So it's not hopeless. It's disgusting what's happening, but it's not hopeless. There is a way out.
They're mobilizing their base. That's what they're trying to do, and they're using these issues, including rape, including granting pardons to fascists, killers, including militarizing the border uh, in every way possible so that their people are energized. Uh, but it's going to take twice that energy from democratic forces with a small d. I'm talking about workers, I'm talking about black folk, white folk, Latino, Asian, LGBTQ, young people to rally around a pro people, pro worker, pro peace, pro environment platform to turn this country around. Uh, and that means bringing that pressure to bear not only against the GOP, but also against what they call corporate Democrats and their concessions. Because without that, people just get alienated and we end up in the same political uh, stalemate. There was an important case in New York. Uh, Brother Neely was murdered, choked to death on the subway. Uh, this young man was suffering from being unhoused. He was an artist, cultural worker. Um, he suffered from mental health challenges, was hungry, and which was shouting his hunger and disappointment in the New York subway. And he was grabbed and thrown on the ground and put in a chokehold and died, choked to death. And then the police took him to the police station, the perpetrator, and let him go. And for several days, Anita, there were protests. And we have to be very proud of the New York Young Communist League, who organized
Mhm.
protests at City Hall right outside of the New York Attorney General's office, among other groups. Uh, there was a coalition that the YCL helped initiate, and there were other protests around the city uh, demanding prosecution. And there was even one planned today. I don't know if they're going through with it. But then late yesterday, we learned that second degree manslaughter charges are going to be preferred against the killer.
Right.
Um, so public pressure does matter, Anita.
Absolutely. You could see Alvin Bragg, the prosecutor, kind of nervously trying to tamp down the protests in some forum that he was talking in. But finally, those protests really had an impact, apparently. And there was a case like this in San Francisco last year, and in that case, the perpetrator, the person who was the murderer, was arrested immediately, and that trial is still not completed, but he was charged right away. So I'm grateful that finally this man has been charged rightly, and I hope we have justice for Jordan Neely in the future, in the near future. and as a symbol to others to, that no, homelessness, violence against homeless people is not going to be tolerated.
Cannot be tolerated, will not be tolerated. And you have, this is New York City. And in New York City, like LA, Rosanna, there's a homeless crisis, you know. And many homeless people suffer from mental health challenges. And if vigilantes are going to take the law into their own hands and shoot and choke and by whatever means attack people who are obviously suffering, there's going to be hell to pay. You just can't do it. Um, and I understand that the New York comrades are going ahead with the demonstration at City Hall. What time is that demonstration? If you're watching at 4 p.m., New York City, City Hall, be there or be square. One Hogan Place, if you care, be there. One Hogan Place, and call for a swift and vigorous prosecution of the killer. I mean, it's really justice. Justice must be served. Um, we're going to keep fighting. As Rosanna's right, we cannot let these attacks from the right get us down. We got to, our optimism is birthed out of struggle, and that's the only thing that keeps us going. Let's move to the mailbag question. Uh, we got a couple of good ones from a reader who asks us, why is the United States supporting Ukraine against our communist brothers? I think he went on to say, I'm an American communist and I'm supporting Russia. Um, huh? Scott?
Yeah, that's the Russian Federation is not the Soviet Union. Um, Vladimir Putin is not a communist. He's not pursuing a communist strategy of international relations or development. Um, uh, there's not much more to say than that. As an American communist, I'd say we support the international working class. We support peace. We oppose U.S. and NATO imperialism. But you know, again, the Russian Federation is not communist. It's not the Soviet Union. Those days are past.
That we didn't support the invasion. We didn't support the invasion. They got to withdraw the troops. NATO has to stop expanding. In fact, they should withdraw. Uh, and but we got to build a movement. And I don't know why people keep have this illusion that Putin and them represent left forces. They don't, Anita. Not even close. National,
Exactly.
representing Russian big business.
Exactly.
U.S. media likes to call them oligarchs. I don't use that word unless you're
Well,
going to
we have
call
our own oligarchs.
them exactly.
Hmm.
Although we should mention, sorry,
Oh,
that it.
well, go
Sorry.
ahead, Scott.
Oh, Anita, no, I'm sorry. I cut you off. Please continue.
Well, I've lost my train of thought. Go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say just on that end, U.S. Imperialism complicates this because while there is evidence that Russia has, supported and advanced the cause of, extreme right movements throughout Europe and in the United States, in other cases, in countries that are victims of U.S. imperialism, um, Russia has often positioned itself as an ally and as a trading partner. So U.S. imperialism puts pressure on things in such a way that you know, it turns people in that direction in many cases.
The Russian nationalists have been, the Russian nation, the country, has been encircled by NATO. Number one, and and the Russian nationalists are favoring any force in Europe that's opposed to NATO. And that means they support Le Pen. In France, they support, I forget them fools in the UK, and the Trump forces, so they say, in the United States. I mean, and it's based on
Mm-hmm.
their perception of what serves their national interests. I think they're making a mistake. You don't feed the beast. Absolutely. But these are not left people. These are people who ransacked public property. They stole the wealth created by the Soviet working class. They privatized it and they put it in their
Mm-hmm.
own pockets. And there ain't nothing and it serves their imperialism or their imperialist ambitions. That's why they say that Ukraine is part of Russia. Lenin was wrong. It was always part of Russia. We used to call that Great Russian Chauvinism. Great Russian
Mm-hmm.
Chauvinism. That's what that is. And we don't want no parts of that. We want the United States to get out of there, NATO to get out of there, and 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 and, and the Chinese have put forward a peace plan that's garnered a lot of support, much to
Mm-hmm.
Biden and them's chagrin. And Brazil, Lula and them are in favor of it. South Africa's in favor of it. And so there's a multi uh, national effort now to bring about a ceasefire and a cessation of, so that allow that country to be sovereign, govern itself. By the way, they got to legalize the Communist Party and the trade unions there. They're outlawed now, and let uh, peace and rebuilding that country, Ukraine, take place. Well, that does it for this week. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Uh, Remember to support your local UPS Teamsters in the upcoming negotiations and support the fight to prosecute Neely's killer. And we'll see you next week. Same place, same station. Until then, stay strong, stay safe, stay in the fight. Have a good week, everybody.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.